This is Coach Jaron again with Objective Thinking, where we use math and logic to prove the truth about sports, which in this case is that LeBron is the absolute basketball GOAT. Today we are going to use facts to dispel the notion that Jordan would destroy today's NBA.
How much would MJ punish in today's game?
Well, he would have destroyed all competition. I don't think there's any question about that. But he wouldn't have averaged 50 and shot 75% from the field. That's definitely hyperbolic on David Falk's part. One of, if not the elite agent of his time, and still is still big time as far as I'm concerned. He really knows what the hell he's doing. But let me be very, very clear. I think Michael Jordan would have averaged about 40. I think his rival in terms of scoring would have been exactly who it should be, James Harden, in today's rules. But I think that Jordan would have had an edge because of what Jordan did on the defensive side of the ball as well. James Harden just destroys you off the dribble, step back three-point shots and get to the hole and get to the free throw line. I think that Jordan would have done that primarily from a two-point range, even though I think he would have developed a better three-point game. But I think where he would have really made his bones with steals and defending, locking down opponents. And I think the thing that's not mentioned every time, Jay, that people talk about Jordan, they always talk about how many points he would have scored or how he would have destroyed the competition because of what he did offensively. I think that people don't realize the heart transplants he would have forced, or he would have just snatched dudes' hearts all around the league. He would have taken them out. They would have wanted no part of him because that was Jordan's specialty. He wasn't about just beating you, Molly, Max, Jay. He was about demoralizing you, taking your heart away from you, and making sure that you knew you couldn't mess with him at all, that you wanted no parts of him. It wasn't enough for him to walk off the court victorious. He literally wanted to snatch your heart out of your chest. And that's one of the things that you don't see much of in the modern day game. That's the difference. And that's why I think, he would have averaged his 40. He would have shot 50% from the field. And more importantly, a lot of the damage would have been done on the defensive end of the floor because of his ability to shut people down. That's where he would have just annihilated dudes.
While I tear Stephen A's take apart, I'm going to show they do play defense in the NBA today. Stephen A., you think Jordan would annihilate players on defense and tear their hearts out if he played today because he did in his era. Let me explain how big a joke this is. Remember, we are comparing MJ to LeBron. MJ only appears better because of who he got to guard. Jordan's competition wasn't even in the same league as LeBron's. In his last three finals, Jordan spent most of his time guarding 6'3", 190-pound Hersey Hawkins and 6'4", 190-pound Jeff Hornacek, who was basically a spot-up shooter. Horny was too slow and light to take defenders to the hole. Jordan was much bigger at 6'6" and 198 pounds. He was stronger and he was faster. Of course he dominated them. Physical superiority always does. Whereas, in LeBron's last three finals, he spent the majority of his time guarding 6'11", 240-pound Kevin Durant and 6'7", 230-pound Jimmy Butler. Stephen A., do you really want to argue that MJ was such a good defender he would tear their hearts out? I'm sure Durant and Butler are scared to death thinking about having to go against MJ. I'm sure they're afraid they might not even be able to score at all. You do realize how stupid that sounds, right? Kevin would look down at Michael and be like, dude, you're too small. I'm going to shoot over you all day long, and there is nothing you can do about it. Jimmy would bend over, put his hand 2 feet from the floor, the sign for too small, and would say, Michael, I'm taking to the rim all game, and physics says your body can't stop me. Since we're comparing MJ to LeBron, think how much more physically dominant LeBron would be if he got to guard Hawkins and Hornacek. Obviously, because of his size and strength and speed, he would be even more dominant against them than Jordan. Now think how physically inferior Jordan would be on defense if he had to guard Durant and Butler. I would make that trade every day and twice on Sunday. How about you Jordan GOAT supporters? Would you like to guard Durant and Butler instead of Hawkins and Hornacek? If you say yes, you are a total MJ homer in all sports. The quality and size of the opponent makes a huge difference in whether you will dominate or be dominated. I challenge anyone to make an argument for why that isn't true. It's an absolute fact.
This is not that hard to figure out. Of course, David Falk is being ridiculous. I originally said a couple days ago Jordan would average 40 easy. And the reason I said that is as follows. First of all, in this day and age, you have to assume Jordan's coming up in this day and age. You don't just pluck a guy out of his prime and drop him. Okay, what kind of game does he have? Because the game evolves, the rules change. Anyone coming up nowadays is shooting the three if you play on the perimeter. You're shooting the three, you're coming up shooting the three. So then the question is, does that player have the capacity to really become a good three-point shooter? Jordan, when he started shooting the three, shot 37% one year, 40, almost 3% one year in the second half of his career, indicating he had the ability to be a very good three-point shooter. So when he talks about shooting percentage, 75%, of course not. In fact, his field goal percentage probably would have fallen because he'd be taking more lower percentage shots. However, he would have hit a lot of them. He would have been one of the better three-point shooters in the league because if that's what he's working on, that's what would have happened, as evidenced by the fact that he did shoot average 40% over 2 seasons toward the end. So you bump that way up, and you say his true shooting percentage probably rises, especially in this scoring day and age where the primary ball handler can, maybe it's not as much ISO ball, but can really monopolize the usage of the ball. You look at Jordan. Remember that I said if Pippen didn't have the migraine in Game 7 against the Pistons, the first time Jordan had another All-Star, he'd have beaten them. Jordan took 27 shots, hit 13. They're all two-pointed. He's only taking mid-range shots. He had almost 50% of them, dropped 30-something, had a bunch of assists and rebounds, the whole thing. The only other guy who did anything, Horace Grant, dropped 10 points. He shot like 3 of 17. Jordan was keeping teams in games counting 1 and 2 at a time. You add the three-point game and an increased percentage shot from 3, Jordan's averaging easily 40 a game. His true shooting percentage probably goes up. And by the way, when guys lead the league nowadays in scoring, it's by a point or two. Jordan, when he was young, was not leading the league in scoring by a point or two. Later in his career, he beat Karl Malone by a couple points, right? Later in his career. Early in his career, he was smoking dudes like Dominique Wilkins, 5, 6, 7 points more per game on average. So when you look at the distance between him and second place, and you look at guys averaging close to 35 nowadays, Jordan's clearly going to be up over 40 points a game as a great two-way player. I mean, he's the greatest player of all time for a reason.
Max, your main argument is just as bad as Stephen A's. You left out most of the truth. You said if Jordan grew up in today and spent as much time from a young age as today's players practicing threes, he would be one of the best three-point shooters. You cited as evidence how he got very good at the end of his career after working on it. Shooting 37 and almost 43? That is so deceiving. Here's the whole truth about MJ's three-point shooting prowess, or lack thereof. The NBA three-point line distance is 23 feet, 9 inches. 1996 and 1997 were the 2 years you used for evidence that his shooting improved. Now, Max, I'm old enough to remember, even if the young people probably don't know, the NBA shortened the three-point line to 22 feet during those years. That's right. shorter than the college three-point line is today. Wow. Jordan took more shots and had a better shooting percentage from only 22 feet? That's amazing. Not. Of course it's easier to shoot from a shorter distance, and he's going to shoot a higher percentage. Duh. The truth of the matter is, if you only count shots made from the true three-point line of 23 feet 9 inches, MJ's career three-point shooting percentage is only 28.8%, which is one of the worst ever for a player that took over 1,000 threes in their career. According to Sportscasting, that's the 5th worst percentage ever by any player. And it gets even worse for MJ. When they moved the three-point line back out to the true distance in 1998, he shot 24%. That was dead last. In other words, he was the very worst shooter among players who took at least 100 threes that year. Ouch! That proves he didn't get better. For even more proof he didn't get better, he shot a whopping 19 and 29% his last 2 years in the league. If he sucked that bad his last 3 years in the league after practicing his whole career, how on earth can you make an argument that he would be one of the best three-point shooters? The numbers prove that that is absurd.
So, couple things. Number one, the 40-50, maybe. 75% from the field, I don't think about that. That's a little bit embellishment. But the 40-50, I know both of you guys said maybe not. I'm sitting here saying maybe. Because we think about Michael Jordan in the triangle system. From somebody who's played in that system, the amount of passes and 33 cuts for every damn pass. Trust me, it took me a whole season to figure out the blueprint of how that offense works, right? And I was a point guard. I didn't even play the two position where you catch the ball at the pinch post. But if you're talking about the Michael Jordan with Doug Collins, that Michael Jordan that was able to have the ball in his hands, to push the ball down the court, to do whatever he wants, to play at a fast pace, can get to Allen Iverson was able to get to the free throw line like 9-10 times a game throughout his career because, you hit him, you go to the free throw line. If Michael Jordan were in this age where that's a foul, like back in the day, the hand used to be part of the ball. You had guys, Stephen A., you felt this all the time. Guys rip through shots going like this. You have to shoot that ball. They're not calling that. This is a foul now. So I don't know. I'm sitting there thinking maybe he could have averaged 40 and 50 if he had the green light to shoot the ball as much as James Harden, and if he was playing at the pace that Doug Collins allowed him to play, the pace that is in today's game and age. He might be able to do that, Stephen A. He might be able to get that one done.
J. Will. MJ averaging 50 is not a maybe. It's a stupid. You said if Jordan had the ball in his hands and the green light to shoot like Harden, at today's pace, he could average 50. What drugs are you smoking? First off, Jordan had an even greener light than Harden. In 2019, Harden led the league in scoring at 36 points on 25 shots per game, and the game had a pace of 100. In 1987, under Collins, Jordan led the NBA in scoring at 37 points, but he needed 28 shots per game with the same game pace. You do realize that 28 is more than 25, right? So what green light are you talking about? Second, points don't accumulate magically. Using MJ's career averages in points and efficient field goal percentage, he would have to have over 38 field goal attempts per game, as well as shoot more than 13 free throws per game. Think about it. How many more shots would he have to take to go to the free throw line 13 times? Since if you get fouled on a shot, it doesn't count as a field goal attempt. 42, 43. This is how ridiculous 38 field goal attempts and 13 free throws per game is. In 2024, Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving were numbers 1 and 8 in field goal attempts per game with a combined 43. And they only shot 12 free throws together. Jay Will. That means MJ would have to take almost as many shots as them combined and more free throws. To think one player today would take that many shots in a game is just one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. I guess the rest of the players on the team would just sit around and pick their noses while he shoots because none of them wants a contract. Dude, it would never happen.
Back in the day when they hacked you, mugged you, beat you up, beat you down, as they showed during the Pistons, the bad boy Pistons going against Jordan and the Jordan rules. Considering how the game is called today, back in the day, do y'all realize that Jordan averaged a career 8.2 free throws per game? 8.2. At the very least, that would double in today's game. He'd get every call.
Here we go again with the old man on the porch saying, "Get off my grass." Back in our days, you had to be tough. We had to walk miles to and from school uphill, both ways, in the snow with no coats. Jordan and everyone else got mugged on the basketball court, and they rarely called fouls. Listen, I'm from those days too, and it's just not true. I call it the physicality farce. There were a few cheap shots, but the physicality of almost all the basketball possessions wasn't even close to today's. Only Jordan homers won't acknowledge today's NBA players are just bigger, faster, and stronger. And therefore, the game is more physical and you need to be tougher. Here are some stats. In 1991, the year the Bulls finally beat the Pistons, who, in Stephen A's words, hacked you, mugged you, beat you up, beat you down. Or in other words, one of the most physical teams ever in the NBA. The average number of fouls called in a game was 23, leading to 28 free throws. In 2024, there were only 19 fouls, as compared to 23. And only 22 free throws were awarded per game. Fact. Fouls and free throws are down about 20% from Jordan's playing days. That fact proves Jay Will's "all you have to do is get touched and they call a foul" is full of HUD. Stephen A., according to your logic, because there are fewer fouls called today, you can be able to get away with more physicality, which means the game must be tougher today than it has ever been. You said Jordan would easily shoot double the amount of free throws. So you're talking what? 17, 18, 19? You need to reconsider the way the game is called today. At an average of 22 free throws per game, you realize you're saying Jordan would shoot up to 86% of his team's total free throws. Homer, homer, homer. What you should be saying is, 80% of 8.2 equals 6.6. That's how many free throws MJ would shoot per game if he played today. I love that math is objective. Stephen A., are you tired of being proven wrong? I'm still coming after you. If you are an objective pundit at all, you will come to know the truth that LeBron James is the absolute GOAT. I hope all you noticed in the background, all the killer screens, those prove the physicality of today's games. Thanks for watching this video. Until next time.